So here's what your letter says. You can deny it if you want. Dear George, I hereby carry out my 1965 resolution to write a letter to the family. Not a small accomplishment for me, you know. Christmas is over and things are back to normal. I didn't stray very far from Amherstburg, getting to Sarnia only, and then going a few days later to the funeral of Wilfred Hawkins on January the 4th. I met a number of the Woodcocks there, and Eleanor and John and the children were down for the wake. But I was sorry to miss John and the kids who left that night. Eleanor and Sheila stayed for the funeral. Wilfred died very suddenly, so it was a great shock to Marguerite and me, and Anne. Parish life continues as usual. You never know each day what's going to happen. This year I have more instructions than usual. I have a small class on Thursday night. About 8 come, 5 of whom are not Catholic. About 4 come singly. And now this springtime weather seems to be affecting the young folks. Over a 48-hour period last week, I got 5 calls from couples who plan to be married, after months of quiet on this front. In the first instructions, there are a brother and sister who are Negroes. Both are engaged to Catholics from Detroit, where there are a lot of Negro Catholics. The boy was leader during the summer of a little interracial group of 2 colored boys and 2 white boys who sat down to tackle the problem of integrating the barbershops in town. Remembering this?
Yeah.
Yep. All 6 shops have refused to cut the hair of Negroes, and most of the barbers are Catholics. These boys held weekly meetings reviewing what they had done and planning the next step. They carried out actions such as interviewing the barbers, always a white boy and a colored boy together, printing a declaration in favor of fairness, which they got about 70 white boys to sign, writing letters to the barbers to explain fully their goals and their reasons and so on, having the Ontario Human Rights Code framed, and asking the barbers to hang them in their shops as a sign by which people could recognize that they would follow a fair policy. It was interesting to get my hair cut and hear the barber give a running commentary on the whole thing, not knowing that I had anything to do with it. And me saying, "Oh, is that so?" Well. In the end, after some strong opposition from 2 or 3 of them, all the barbers eventually had cut Negro's hair except one, and he hasn't been tried yet. However, he has the code hanging in his shop. The anticlimax of the whole deal is that the Negroes are not eager to change their patterns. They still, for the most part, go to their favorite barber in Windsor or Detroit. Even so, it is a bit satisfying to take part in the struggle for human rights that is one of the most significant social movements in our time. Pope John said that not only do men have these rights, but they have the duties to secure these rights. At one point, the CBC got wind of this and wanted to film the boys interviewing one recalcitrant barber. The cameras would be hidden. This was the man who was most opposed, saying that he would close up shop before cutting any Negro's hair, and so on. However, he was an old man, had had a heart attack, and had a sick wife, so the boys decided that filming it would do more harm than good. There are about 300 Negroes in town. The white people think that there is no discrimination here, but the Negroes all say there is, especially in housing and jobs. But as yet, they don't do anything about it except gripe among themselves. They have their own churches, 3 of them, and there is no socializing with white people. But there's always one elected to the town council. One from Amherstburg is a PhD and is a professor at the University of Windsor. This past summer, after having left Houston 6 years ago, I had the chance to drive back. I planned the trip with Father John Sheehan, who had to return there after teaching in the north. But most of the time, there were 3 or 4 priests. The trip took us from Rochester to Washington, then through Maryland and West Virginia to Cincinnati, then through Kentucky and Tennessee to Mississippi, and from there through Louisiana to Texas. In conversation, we solved all the problems of politics and racism, while we felt ourselves to be really in really alien territory, especially in Mississippi and northern Louisiana. If we'd had a sign, quotation marks, outside agitator on our car, we would likely never have gotten through. In Mississippi, we came across 2 road gangs of young Negro convicts dressed in striped prison uniforms. In Faraday, Louisiana, we talked to a young Negro parish priest. Father Thompson is his name. I had known him in Houston. He gave us firsthand the story of what it meant to live in the midst of rabid racism. He is in the midst of a struggle for the Negro people in this town and is a rallying point for them, even though few of the people are Catholics here. The Ku Klux Klan is very active, and he has trouble with his mail and his phone calls. He said that the previous night there were 5 cross burnings in the Negro neighborhood by the Ku Klux Klan. Well, enough about my trip. I'd be glad to expand on it if you, through politeness, ask me about it when I see you. I hear the wedding bells from time to time and rumors that there are soon to be more. I guess the time has come when that is to be expected. I hope the channels of communication will open up better after I get this letter off. In other words, I hope to get more news of what's going on. It's a funny thing. I learned that if I don't write letters to the family, I hardly ever receive any. Our rectory here was built for 1 or 2 priests in the last century, so we are adding a big addition for offices and meeting rooms and a couple of guest rooms. It's moving ahead very fast because the weather has been as perfect for it as possible, and the Italians with the construction company are the hardest workers I've ever seen. So try now to be the first other Thompson to visit me in Amherstburg.
And today is...
And didn't sign it.
Today's the day.
And today's the 40th?
Today is the 40th anniversary of Uncle George's death.
Oh, wow.
And what's the date today? The date today is?
July 26th.
26 today, yeah.
So this was 6 months ago, 3 years back. Just as January 26th, but 1965.
Oh,
That's a great letter.
It's a great. There's a lot of
There's
history
a
in that.
lot of...
The way we use language, like
Yes.
talking about Negroes.
Negroes, we won't use that anymore.
No.
And blacks would say that they were always at the bottom of the social ladder. Then the Jews came in, they were for a while with them at the bottom of the ladder, and they made alliances, but then the Jews moved up. The Irish came in, they were at the bottom of the social ladder, but then they moved up. The Poles came in, they were at the bottom of the social ladder, and then they moved up. And the blacks said, for some strange reason, we had a hard problem getting up.